The apology. The night pressed in around me, its darkness thick and suffocating as I drifted into uneasy slumber. But my rest was short-lived, shattered by a sense of unease that gripped me like a vice. I awoke with a start, my heart pounding in my chest as I glanced around the room, searching for the source of my unease. And then I saw it, a small piece of paper nestled on my bedside table as if it had been placed there with care. I reached for it, my hands trembling as I unfolded the note and read the words written upon it. "I'm sorry for what I did." A chill ran down my spine as I stared at the note, confusion and fear warring within me. Who could have written it? And what did they mean by what I did? I lived alone. I searched the room, my heart pounding in my chest as I looked for any sign of an intruder. But there was nothing, only the empty silence of the night. I tried to shake off the sense of unease that clung to me like a second skin, but the words of the note echoed in my mind, refusing to be ignored. I spent the rest of the night in a state of restless agitation, the darkness pressing in around me as I tried in vain to find solace in sleep. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not escape the sense of unease that had settled over me. And as the first light of dawn began to creep through the curtains, I knew that I could not rest until I uncovered the truth behind the note that had appeared in the dead of night. For I knew that whatever lay behind its cryptic message was far more terrifying than anything I could have imagined. The days passed in a blur, the memory of the note haunting me like a specter in the night. Everywhere I went, I felt as though I were being watched, as if unseen eyes followed my every move. I searched every corner of my home, desperate for any sign of an intruder, but there was nothing, no trace of anyone or anything that could have written the note. And yet, the sense of unease persisted, gnawing at the edges of my consciousness like a hungry beast. I began to hear strange noises in the night, a faint whispering that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. I told myself it was just my imagination, that the stress of the note had driven me to madness. But deep down, I knew that something was terribly wrong. And then, one night, as I lay in bed, I felt it, a presence in the room with me, cold and malevolent. I could hear its soft breathing, feel its icy breath against my skin as it hovered just beyond the edge of perception. I tried to scream, to call out for help, but no sound escaped my lips. I was paralyzed, trapped in the grip of terror as the presence drew closer, its touch like ice against my skin. And then, just when I thought I could bear it no longer, it was gone, disappearing into the darkness as suddenly as it had appeared. I lay there, shaking and trembling, until the first light of dawn began to creep through the curtains, banishing the darkness and the terror that lurked within it. I became obsessed with uncovering the truth, poring over every detail of my life in search of answers. I combed through old photographs, searching for any sign of a presence that should not have been there. I scoured the internet, delving into obscure forums and websites in search of clues that might explain the note that had appeared on my bedside table. But no matter how hard I searched, I could find no explanation for the strange events that had plagued me in recent days. It was as if the note had appeared out of thin air, a harbinger of horrors that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard it, the soft whispering that had haunted my dreams, growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. I felt a chill race down my spine as I realized that the presence was back, its icy touch like a dagger in the darkness. I closed my eyes and prayed for it to go away, but it was no use. The presence drew closer, its breath hot against my skin as it whispered words of madness and despair. And then, just when I thought I could bear it no longer, it spoke, a single word that sent a shiver down my spine. "Forgive," it whispered, its voice barely above a whisper as it echoed through the darkness. I opened my eyes and saw it, a figure standing at the foot of my bed, its form obscured by the shadows that danced in the moonlight. I tried to scream, to flee from the horror that lurked before me, but I was frozen in place, trapped in the grip of terror. With a suddenness that stole the breath from my lungs, the figure vanished, leaving me alone in the darkness once more. I lay there, shaking and trembling, until the first light of dawn began to creep through the curtains. But even as the sun rose on a new day, I knew that the horrors that had haunted me would never truly be gone, that they would linger in the shadows, waiting to strike when I least expected it. Story 2. Reflections of Fear. The night was unusually still as I settled into bed, the soft glow of the moon casting eerie shadows across the room. My wife, Emily, lay beside me, her breathing slow and steady as she drifted off to sleep. I watched her for a moment, a sense of contentment washing over me as I listened to the gentle rhythm of her breathing. But just as I was about to close my eyes and join her in slumber, the shrill ring of the phone shattered the silence, echoing through the empty room like a harbinger of dread. I reached for the receiver, my heart pounding in my chest as I answered the call, a sense of foreboding gnawing at the edges of my consciousness. It was our neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, her voice trembling with fear as she spoke. "I'm sorry to disturb you so late," she said, her words rushed and frantic. "But I need your help. Your daughter keeps staring at the mirror in your bedroom and giggling. I don't know what to do." My blood ran cold at her words, a chill creeping down my spine as I glanced towards the bedroom door, the darkness beyond seeming to stretch into infinity. "We don't have a child," I said, my voice barely above a whisper as I struggled to make sense of Mrs. Thompson's words. "I know," she replied, her voice trembling with fear. "That's what makes it so strange. Please, you have to come home. I don't think I can stay here much longer." A sense of unease settled over me as I hung up the phone, the weight of Mrs. Thompson's words pressing down on me like a leaden weight. I turned to Emily, shaking her gently as I tried to rouse her from her slumber. "We have to go home," I said, my voice urgent with fear. "Something's not right." We rushed home in a frenzy, the streets empty and devoid of life as if the very night itself held its breath in anticipation of the horrors that awaited us. My heart hammered in my chest as we burst through the front door, the darkness of the house seeming to swallow us whole. I led Emily to the bedroom, my hand trembling as I reached for the door, unsure of what we would find on the other side. With a deep breath, I pushed it open, the room bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight streaming through the window. And there, in the corner, stood the mirror, a silent sentinel that seemed to beckon to us from the depths of its reflection. I approached it cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest as I studied the mirror's surface for any sign of the child Mrs. Thompson had described. But there was nothing, only our own reflection staring back at us with empty eyes. Emily let out a shaky breath, her hand tightening around mine as she glanced around the room. "There's nothing here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you sure Mrs. Thompson didn't just imagine it?" I shook my head, a sense of unease still gnawing at the edges of my consciousness. "I don't know," I said, my voice hoarse with fear. "But something doesn't feel right. We should cover the mirror, just in case." We draped a sheet over the mirror, obscuring its surface from view. And as we did, a sense of relief washed over me, as if by covering the mirror, we had somehow banished the darkness that lurked within. But even as we turned to leave the room, a faint whisper echoed through the silence. I glanced back at the mirror, my heart pounding in my chest as I realized that the whispers were coming from within. And then, with a suddenness that stole the breath from my lungs, the sheet fell away, revealing the mirror's surface once more. But this time, it was different. A darkness seemed to swirl within its depths, a malevolent presence. I reached out to cover it once more, but before I could, a voice echoed through the darkness, soft and sinister. "Help me," it whispered, "please, help me." The voice echoed through the room, its words like a siren's call, drawing us inexorably towards the mirror. I hesitated, my hand hovering inches from its surface as I struggled to resist the pull of its dark allure. But Emily stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the mirror's depths as if in a trance. "Emily, no!" I cried, reaching out to grab her arm, but it was too late. In the blink of an eye, she vanished into the mirror's depths, leaving me standing alone in the darkness. Panic surged within me as I stared at the empty space where she had stood just moments before. I reached out to touch the mirror, but my hand passed through its surface as if it were nothing more than smoke and shadow. Desperation clawed at my chest as I realized that I had to follow her, no matter the cost. With a deep breath, I stepped forward, my foot crossing the threshold into the mirror's depths. And as I did, the world around me shifted and changed, twisting into a nightmarish landscape of darkness and despair. I stumbled forward, my senses reeling as I tried to make sense of the horrors that surrounded me. Shapes loomed in the darkness, their forms twisted and distorted into grotesque caricatures of humanity. I could hear Emily's voice echoing through the emptiness, a faint whisper in the darkness that guided me forward. But with each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, suffocating and oppressive. I felt as though I were drowning in a sea of shadows, my breath coming in short gasps as I struggled to find my way through the darkness. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I saw her, a faint figure in the distance, her form illuminated by a faint glimmer of light. I pushed forward, the darkness parting before me as I drew closer to her. But as I reached out to touch her, she turned towards me, her eyes empty and devoid of emotion. "Help me," she whispered, her voice a hollow echo in the darkness. "Please, help me." And then, she vanished into the darkness, leaving me standing alone in the abyss. And as the darkness closed in around me once more, I knew that I was trapped, that there was no escape from the horrors that awaited me in the depths of the mirror. The end. Subscribe for more. Thank you.